Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is the second time that I'm trying to record this video. I literally recorded the entire video and when I went to edit, it wouldn't sync the video and audio properly. Like the audio was a second behind, which I find incredibly annoying to watch. So I was like, no, can it? Let's just start over. So, second time lucky, hopefully. In today's video, I'm just going to be talking a little bit about my favorite movies. This was requested of me a long time ago, and I'm finally getting around to doing it. I wrote them down in my little notebook. I actually found this quite hard to do. I had to think for a long time about what I was going to put on this list. I can't say that they are genuinely all like it's a top 10, but I can't say that they're all genuinely my favorite movies. But every time I thought about it, these were just the ones that came to mind. They're all some movies that I've all seen a lot. And aside from my top 3, they're not really in a particular order. My top 3 is my clear 1, 2, and 3. Everything else is just kind of random. I will try for the lesser known movies. I will try to do a little recap. But I think most movies are pretty well known, and I have to admit that a lot of them I haven't seen in years, and I don't necessarily remember. I know like the plot of the movie, but I can't explain in detail what it's about. So let's look it up. Alright, here we go. So I'll save my top 3 for the end. So starting off is Goldeneye, which is a James Bond movie. I love James Bond. I own almost all of them on DVD except for the newer ones. My very unpopular opinion is that I do not like Daniel Craig as James Bond. I don't know, like a lot of people think he's one of the best ones. I think he is quite possibly the worst. He's no doubt a good-looking man and a good actor, but James Bond is supposed to be smooth and charming, and I don't think Daniel Craig is. I find him kind of, he never has a smile on his face. He always looks in a bad mood, and I just don't think that that's James Bond. Like, James Bond is supposed to be the guy that can get every girl and that can talk his way out of anything, and I just don't get that from Daniel Craig. I believe the last movie I saw was the one after Skyfall, and I don't even remember the title, and I don't think it's the last one either, and it's a shame because I love the whole James Bond series so much, but everything from Casino Royale onwards is just not my favorite. Casino Royale was such a highly acclaimed movie, and I hated it. Yeah, I don't know. I just like old school James Bond, I guess. So, Goldeneye is from the Pierce Brosnan time, who is my second favorite James Bond. The first, of course, being Sean Connery. I think Pierce Brosnan embodied like that charming, kind of almost like a sleazeball type guy. I just think, yeah, I think for me that's what James Bond is supposed to be, and I feel like he embodied that. Now, I can't tell you what it's about. I haven't seen it in years, and I saw it a lot. I know, like, I can see it in my head what it's about, but I can't explain it, because I think I'm gonna get details wrong. It has a lot to do with Russians and stealing satellites, and I think trying to blow up London, if I remember correctly. It's just been such a long time since I've seen it, and I have them on DVD. It's like whenever I feel like watching a James Bond movie, Goldeneye is the first one I grab. Similar to like Prisoner of Azkaban with Harry Potter. It's like the first book I grab when I think about it. Oh, that reminds me, I haven't put any Harry Potter movie on this list because it goes without saying that that whole series is one of my favorites. But I don't want to include it in everything I do, so this is a Harry Potter free list. Yeah, I don't know, Goldeneye, it's just that whole era of like Die Another Day, Tomorrow Never Dies. I love all those movies. I think they're great storylines, and I love Pierce Brosnan, and I think Goldeneye is that great kind of between action and story kind of a thing. So I don't know, I just love it. It's my favorite James Bond, and it's one of my favorite movies ever. Then next on my list is Pretty Woman. I have not watched that movie, I want to say, in like 20 years. I loved it as a teenager. I even loved it as a kid. I think it was out when I was like fairly little. And similar to another movie, well, similar to my favorite movie, which I'll get to at the end, there was a lot that I didn't understand as a kid that when I rewatched it as an adult, I was like, oh, I did not get that back then. A lot of like adult topics that you don't pick up on. But I just loved that movie. I mean, it's romantic. It's a total chick flick. I had a real thing for Richard Gere back then, and I don't even find him that attractive, but he had like something. And I have loved Julia Roberts since that movie. Like, I love her in everything she does just because I loved her so much in Pretty Woman. Yeah, I mean, total like chick flick type movie, but I love it. One of my favorites. Then next up is The Little Mermaid. It is my favorite Disney movie, and just like classically one of my favorites. I can honestly say that I've seen like better Disney movies in the last like decade, but for nostalgia reasons, it's just my favorite. It was my favorite as a child. It is still my favorite today. Part of Your World is like one of my favorite Disney songs. Whenever I go to Disney World, I always like go on the Little Mermaid ride multiple times a day. Yeah, I just love that movie. There's a lot to do, I think, in recent years about, that it's sexist and anti-feminine and all that stuff, which I can understand, but I mean, it's a Disney movie from the 80s. If we're gonna talk about that, we probably have to throw Pretty Woman in the bin too. I mean, I don't want to dissect a Disney movie from the olden days. Oh, the 80s is not the olden days. I was born in the 80s, but it's still a different time, and it's a Disney movie, okay? Like, yeah, she was a girl that gave up her whole life, including her family, to be with the man she loves, but let's be honest, people today still do that. That's not like an anti-female thing, that's a love thing. And if we can forget about the fact that she was only 16 years old, every Disney princess back in the day was. So I just don't want to dissect this movie. I want to take it for what it was when it was released. And it was my absolute favorite Disney movie, and it still is. I don't even necessarily know if Ariel is my favorite Disney princess. I think that honor might go to Belle, but I do really, really love it. Is just my favorite Disney movie by any means, and I think always will be. this was in my early 20s because I was still living at home, and I just watched it so many times. I ended up just repurposing the DVD for myself. Like, I took it with me. I think it's a really great movie. So it actually stars Sandra Bullock and Ryan Gosling, which is, they're two big names. I mean, Ryan Gosling at the time, he played a 17-year-old. I think he might have just been in his early 20s or something, so I don't think he was well known yet. The other guy that's in it, and I don't know his name, I think he has a well-known face. I've seen him in Dawson's Creek and a few other things on TV, so it's not like he's an unknown actor. He just doesn't have a big name, I think. But Sandra Bullock already had a big name back then, and I just feel like it's not a very well-known movie. Now, I don't necessarily want to give away the plot to this movie, but if you watch it, you will see very early on what happens. So I'm just going to talk about it. If you don't want to hear anything about it, just tune out for a few minutes. But I don't think I'm giving anything away because it's just how this movie, you just find out very early on in the movie. So Sandra Bullock is a homicide detective, and she finds a woman's body and has to, figure out who did it. And she lands on Ryan Gosling's character, who is a high school boy, very rich, very popular, kind of arrogant, feels like he is better than everyone. And she really hates him because she hates that kind of person from when she was in high school. And then the other guy is in high school with him, but is very shy, kind of a geek, doesn't talk to a lot of people. And she really just believes that Ryan Gosling's character did it and that this guy had nothing to do with it. But as it turns out, and again, this is revealed quite early on in the movie, it's not like you find this out at the very end. It's kind of what the whole movie is about, is that these two teenagers who seemingly have nothing in common planned out the perfect murder. They worked together to give each other alibis, to not leave behind any forensic evidence, like the geeky kind of kid, and I don't mean that in a bad way because I was a geek in high school, but the geeky kind of kid was the sort of the brains behind it and knew how to do it without leaving evidence. And just the way you see throughout the whole movie how they planned it, how they did it, and it was so well done. And then just how she discovers what happened and hunts them down. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. I don't think I'm doing it justice, but it is such a good movie. The whole story of when you find out how they did everything, it is just so well done. And I highly, highly recommend it if you have not seen it. And I think a lot of you probably haven't. It's not very well known, but it is so good. You won't regret it. Then next on my list is Die Hard with a Vengeance. It is one of those where I actually think the sequel is the best out of all three. I love all the Die Hard movies. I will say, again, unpopular opinion, that I do not believe Die Hard is a Christmas movie, and you will never be able to convince me otherwise. I strongly believe that if it was meant to be a Christmas movie, they would have made the entire franchise at Christmas, and they didn't. And Bruce Willis has said it's not a Christmas movie, yet I have a lot of friends who are very, very firm on the fact that it is. And if it makes you feel like Christmas, you do you, boo. It's just not, in my opinion. And Die Hard with a Vengeance was not set at Christmas. I'm pretty sure it was set close to summer. School was still on, but they were hot and sweaty in New York, so I'm pretty sure it was either after summer, before summer, I don't even know. But yeah, I addition of Samuel L. Jackson is fantastic. I think the funny moment between his character and Bruce Willis's character is just great. Like, I don't know, like, I love their relationship. And I think the villain is really good in this movie too. There are so many moments in this movie that I just think are great. So it is, yeah, it's just one of my favorite movies in general to watch. And then the next movie is also the third in a series, and that is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I think though, I mean, Die Hard is pretty separate, although the third movie does have a direct connection to the first. But I think Indiana Jones is less sequel and more just separate story per movie. And I just think the third one is the best. Again, I love all the Indiana Jones movies except for the fourth. That does not exist in my world. It's like horrendous. Same with Die Hard, by the way, but I don't think the fourth Die Hard movie was that bad. I think the fourth Indiana Jones movie needs to be erased from history. It was just that bad. It was really horrible. But the third one, yeah, my favorite. I think in part because Sean Connery is in it, who I absolutely love. But I just think the story is also the best for me. You know, the puzzle that he needs to solve to get ahead in the temple, and then when the temple starts falling apart all around them, like just the chalice. I don't know. I just love that whole storyline. I think it is so well done. I love all of them. I just think Last Crusade, for me, is my favorite. And then the last movie before we go into my top 3 is Back to the Future. The first one, I have all of them on DVD. I actually love all Back to the Futures almost equally. I think they're all great. For a while, the third was actually my favorite. I don't know, a lot of people, I think, didn't like it that much. I actually liked the whole storyline with Clara and, like, being in that whole time era. I love them all. But I do think the first one is ultimately still the best. I can't even, like, there is no way you can explain this movie while doing it justice, because there are so many moments of brilliance in this movie. Just the whole thing, like, I just love it. It is kind of sad or scary to think that that all happened in the past. Like, their future, the one that for them was like our year 3000, like the future they were going to with hoverboards and like super modern technology, is now officially like already in the past for us. So we have surpassed the future in Back to the Future, which is crazy. When you were a kid watching this movie, it's crazy to think that we're now past that. But yeah, love that movie. And then let's get on to my top 3. So in third place is The Shawshank Redemption. I think it's in a lot of people's top 3. It's one of those movies that is... It didn't get, like, Morgan Freeman actually talked about this. He said it didn't get a lot of budget. It was hardly promoted by the studio at all. It got around through word of mouth. People loved it so much when they saw it in the cinema that they just kept recommending it. And before you knew it, everyone had seen it and loved it. And it is just such a brilliant movie. If you have not seen it, Tim Robbins plays a guy who gets convicted of killing his wife and her lover. Now, he, like, to life in prison. Now, he claims the whole time that he was innocent. I won't give away whether he was or not, but he spends a very long time in prison. He becomes best friends with Morgan Freeman's character, and you see, like, he was an accountant, I believe, starts doing like financial matters and bookkeeping and stuff for all the prison guards and for the warden. And in the meantime, silently, he's plotting his escape. And he does it. Oh my gosh. It's so ingeniously done. But it's not just about that. Like, they also, the side characters who are, you know, sometimes have a very small storyline. You can even, like, they follow them when they leave prison after like 60 years behind bars and how they experience life. And it's just so well done. It's just such a beautifully told movie. There's some shit times in prison, and then he kind of becomes sort of like, I wouldn't say the man in prison, but like he starts doing all this work for the staff, and ultimately plans this fantastically brilliant escape. Like, it's such a good movie. I can just only recommend it if you haven't seen it. But it's one of those that whenever I talk to people about great movies, it's almost always in their top 3. So I think it's pretty well known. But if you haven't watched it, I suggest you do. And then in second place is The Greatest Showman. Now, I love musical theater. Every time I go to London, I watch at least 1 or 2 musical theater shows on the West End. I've been to New York twice and never watched a musical on Broadway, which is such a travesty. The first time I was in New York, my friend and I just we decided to go one night to like one of those ticketing booths and just get whatever tickets were left over because they're a lot cheaper. And we were $5 short each. And by the time we got back to our hotel, we were exhausted and just didn't want to go back. So we never made it. And the second time I was in New York was for a work trip. I bought tickets to a show, but I was only there from Saturday to Monday. I had to leave to Philadelphia on Monday because I was going to work. And I arrived on Saturday and there were no, like, the show that I wanted to watch was not playing on Sunday. So I bought tickets for Saturday night, and that was just a huge mistake because I came down with a humongous migraine, which I almost always do after a long haul flight. Generally, my medication just works, but on that occasion, it just wouldn't, and I got stuck in bed pretty much the whole night on Saturday. So I had these really expensive tickets because Broadway's not cheap, and I ended up missing out on the show. So yeah, still have not managed to watch a musical on Broadway. I definitely, like, it's just on my list to do next time I go to New York. But I love musicals. Now, mostly I'm less impressed with musical movies than I am with, like, live musical theater. But I did love Les Miserables. And The Greatest Showman is just something else. The music of The Greatest Showman is possibly the greatest music ever written. Like, I listen to the soundtrack all the time in my car. And the first song of the movie, A Million Dreams, which is after about 5 minutes, makes me cry already instantly. I spent this whole movie crying because of the music. It's not even a sad song. It's actually a very beautiful song, but the music just makes me cry. And then there's so many songs throughout the movie that are like heartbreaking, and I don't know, like, I cry throughout the entire movie, and then at the end of the movie I'm left with a giant smile on my face. Like, it's just such a good movie. My parents, who do not really watch movies that often, they can handle a TV show, but a movie they can't sit in front of the TV that long. I let them watch it 2 years ago at Christmas because it was on TV, and the first 10 or 15 minutes they had their phones out, and I was like, oh, this is just going to be for me. But then they put it down, watched the entire movie, loved it, recommended it to their friends the next day. Like, they were so impressed with it. A friend of mine last year who does not like musicals at all put on Facebook that she was going to watch it, everyone in her comments said how brilliant it was, and she afterwards said that she really loved it. Like, if you are not a fan of musicals, watch it anyway. It's such a good movie. I cannot rave about it enough. I think the only reason it's not my number one is because my number one will always be my number one for various reasons. But The Greatest Showman, it's just a masterpiece. It really is. And then my absolute favorite movie is, drumroll, Dirty Dancing. I think I may have mentioned that in other videos before. You will never hear me say that it's the greatest movie ever made, because it's not, but it is my favorite. It's been my favorite since I saw it for the very first time when I was like 8 years old. I did not understand half of what happened in that movie, but I loved it so much. It was also my best friend in elementary school's favorite movie. We talked about it all the time. We would enact scenes from it, like across the classroom to each other when the teacher wasn't watching. Like, I just loved it. In Belgium, we have school from 8 a.m. until 4:30, except on Wednesdays when we have it until 12. And every Wednesday afternoon, I would come home from school and watch that movie. My dad recorded it on VHS tape off the TV, and it just like towards the end of it, the colors were way off. Like, I think I nearly broke that tape. He would come home from work every week and was like, "Oh, what are we watching?" And he went, "Why do I even ask?" Like, I watched, without exaggerating, I watched that movie at least 100 times. When I went into high school, it became my sick movie. I would watch it every time I was homesick from school. Again, though, I don't think I've seen it in about 10 years because I saw it so much. But it will always remain my favorite movie, I'm pretty sure. It's just, it's like something from my childhood. I loved it so much. It is the ultimate chick flick, but just so well made. You can stay in the hotel now, which is in either Virginia or West Virginia. It's in one of the Virginias, and I'm pretty sure that one day I'm gonna book to stay there, even if it's just for a long weekend. But it just, as a child, I dreamed of spending my summers at Kellerman's, even though I knew it wasn't a real place. I would love to stay in that hotel once. Yeah, I mean, it's very, I love a lot of movies that are based around either singing or dancing. They don't always have to be musicals, but I love just movies like that in general. And that was really all for my favorite movies. I want to give 2 honorable mentions. One to Taken, which just about didn't make my list. It's very similar to the Shawshank Redemption. It's a movie that nobody had heard of until word of mouth started going around, and then everyone had heard of it. It was a very, very good movie that just didn't get the attention it deserved, and yet I think everyone's seen it. Really love that movie. And then another movie that just didn't make my top 10 is Pitch Perfect. Again, very based around singing. I love that movie a lot, but storyline wise, it didn't quite belong in my top 10, I think. It's not by any means like a brilliant movie. I just think it's a feel-good movie, and I love the songs in it, and yeah, a lot of the performances and stuff. So that was it. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I have been crazy busy lately, which again is like lack of videos, but I have 3 days off work next week. I have a 5-day weekend, so I expect more videos then. I'm gonna crank out some videos in those 5 days when I have nothing else to do. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my